Network, Michael Bryant here. Let's go to Broward County now for a hearing that took place earlier today. Jamel Demons, YNK Melly, the South Florida rapper, was on trial last month. You remember it. It was a crazy trial. 2018, the shooting deaths of Anthony Williams and Christopher Thomas Jr. were in the courtroom, and the victims were shot inside a vehicle after they left this recording session about 2:17 in the morning. There is a co-defendant, Cortlen Henry. You also may hear described as Cortlen Henry because of his connection to the Bloods gang. But that's now got to be pushed. It's got to be. Demons and Henry told authorities that their friends were shot in this drive-by shooting. That was their story as the defense. However, the state said, no. Melly was firing the shots. They came from inside the vehicle. So today, both parties agreed they're going to have a retrial on October 9th. But they had some other matters to deal with, and we're going to talk about some of you've heard of the movie 12 Angry Men? Well, maybe not if you're under 100 years old. I think it was Henry Fonda. Great movie. Well, this was a jury in the Melly trial of one angry woman, and we're going to talk about that. But first, let's cover what this hearing was about really today. The motion by the defense was to depose a key state witness. You remember Detective Mark Moretti? Yeah, he was front and center, and they wanted to depose him again, saying they weren't given everything they should have been the first time around. Let's listen.
I know there was a motion, Ms. Liberty, you filed a motion.
Yes, Judge, which I know you reviewed. So I didn't receive an objection from the state, and that's what we had reset for, to give her time to review it.
Understood. So there's nothing you want to add to your motion, correct?
Well, if the state wants to argue, I did have a chance, because this was not put into order, I did provide Mr. Adelstein with an email between the state attorney and all of us stating that she was not going to put Detective Moretti on to testify to the maps, which is exactly what happened in the trial. So I would just like the chance to re-depose him on that subject. As far as the steps came back from the Apple Health data, she didn't, the state attorney themselves didn't bring it to our attention until well after, almost a year after we deposed Detective Moretti. If Mr. Adelstein would show you the email that she sent stating that Moretti was not going to be testifying to these things. And thirdly, my motion, I had actually went to the transcripts of the trial testimony of Detective Moretti writing that motion. So in fact, he did testify. She goes specifically to the distance. It was on the cross-examination. Mr. Adelstein asked him about the distance. He responded totally different than what the FBI had responded. So I believe we have shown good cause. And we would like to re-depose Detective Moretti specifically on those items set forth in the motion and what he had testified to at the trial.
So we will have to see how this thing shakes out, because the court, I hate when they do this, but said, I'm going to take this under submission, and we'll get back to you on that. It's just so unsatisfying on the day you're there all amped up to make your arguments. So we'll see. The trial, again, has been agreed to take place on October 9th. Mr. Jamel Demons will see round 2 of his double murder trial. Catherine Lizardo here, Natalie Whittingham-Burrell. Let's talk about this case. Let's talk about what's going on, and let's talk about what happened in the jury room based on an unnamed jury member who has spoken out. And as I understand it, this particular juror, a woman, was the only one really holding out as they were going through this case. And she was holding out for acquittal, and it was 11-1. And she somehow got a couple of folks in the corner and got them in a headlock and somehow convinced them to see things her way. And so it became a 9-3 deadlock. Natalie, what do you make of this story and the impact on this trial?
Well, what I make of this story is that it's our jury system, right? That's our jury system, that it has to be a unanimous vote, and that if it's less than unanimous, it ends up in a mistrial. And that clearly these jurors had very strong thoughts about the outcome of the case, and they stuck to their guns. It happens, right? It's not the most common outcome, but it does happen. But what I think it means for the import of this case is that the prosecution gets another bite at the apple. That can be both good and bad. You know, they did have issues with getting witnesses to the trial. They had civilian witnesses that were uncooperative, that didn't want to be there, that expressed they didn't want to be there. That's not going to change in the next trial date, and they may not be able to get those people again. They may be able to get the people that they couldn't get before, but those people still are not going to want to be there. So the state's still going to have those issues with their witnesses that they had before.
And then the impact on the Cortlen Henry, I haven't heard officially, but I got to imagine that's going to be pushed. And there was a motion to reconnect the cases that had been previously severed. Catherine, I don't think that's happening for many reasons. So we just haven't heard the mechanics, but I think the housekeeping is the Henry trial is going to have to be pushed. Let's talk about this trial, though, and I'm still fascinated by what apparently went on in the jury room. You would think, I mean, this person said there was yelling, there was screaming, that she, this woman apparently, lost it. I just find that odd, knowing how jury deliberations take place, where it usually happens. It's not like it's in a soundproof booth somewhere. Usually in the hallways, there's always a bailiff assigned. Somebody should have picked up on this. What do you think?
That's what I was thinking too, especially the bailiff might have heard any screaming, but we have a juror here who is unnamed and was courageous enough to come out and correct the story, because my understanding is the juror came out because Melly's mom said that the 9-3 vote was in favor of acquitting him. And so this juror is putting on the record that it was actually 9-3 for a guilty verdict. And it was supposed to be 11-1, like you mentioned. What bothers me is there were a lot of intimidation and even discriminatory remarks from that juror against the other jurors, and that at the end of their deliberation, the jurors were shaken. I'm concerned that it was not raised with the judge as well, because we were talking during the break that the judge would have likely addressed that issue as well.
Yeah, I'm really curious. So, I mean, what the remedy might be if you're going to pull one jury member out. You start over probably with one of the alternates. Could have been a totally different outcome, but here we are now on October 9th. It's going to happen. So, Natalie, when we have a case like this, and nobody who's tried a case wants to retry a case. I guarantee you that. Not one person, win or lose. You hang it all out there, and the last thing you want to do is regroup and do it again. It's not like you're doing a play on Broadway, the illusion of the first time. This is your heart and soul out there, and now you're doing it again. What would you do in this case, Natalie, differently if you were the prosecution?
If I was the prosecution, I would cut back on a lot. So I would cut back on the ballistics evidence. I would have the detective not testify in a mask. I don't think that was necessary at all. I'd ask for the courtroom to be cleared, the cameras to be removed.
Hey, wait a minute. Wait a minute. That's not a good idea.
Sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's
Go
what
ahead.
I'd ask for. That's what I'd ask for. And there are a lot of issues of optics. I don't think they needed the testimony of YNK Melly's girlfriend's mom, who really did not want to be there. And I think that made the prosecutor look very negative when she said, "You forced me to come here. I don't like you. I don't want to be here." It made the prosecutor seem like a bully. So they can just cut back on their case. And I think a more precise case will get to the point a lot sooner. Their accident or crime scene reconstructionists, that was some of their best evidence. They should lead with that or end with that. So that's how I would do it.
Yeah, I remember the first witness was the sort of disconnected relative, and that didn't go well for the prosecution. So, okay, Catherine, you know what's coming. What would you do if what we learned in the jury deliberations is legit? Then you still, as the defense, came close to losing. So, what would you do to bolster the defense case?
Well, it's really tough right now, because now knowing that it was supposed to be 11-1, I have to look at those witnesses again and try to figure out, like what Natalie mentioned, I would do the exact opposite. I mean, it worked in their favor that witness, the investigator who was in the mask. That's definitely one of the things that stood out in everyone's mind, but it doesn't seem like it did anything for the jurors. So maybe focusing on the gang issue and trying to lessen that down for Melly, and also pointing to the fact that there is a co-defendant that trying to figure out and see if the jurors will point to him instead of Melly, because that's the issue why they should be tried together, but now we know that they will still be severed.
It's going to be interesting. So again, make a note on your calendar. You know, if you still use one of those things, put it in your phone. Whatever you may do. October 9th is the date for the retrial of Jamel Demons. Again, he is accused of killing his two friends after a rap session. We'll take a break. We'll come back. Got lots more to cover here this afternoon. This is Law and Crime.